As I've been trying to do for the last couple boss releases, I'm going to do a spoken walkthrough of the new Sanctum of Rebirth in hard mode. My normal setup, just full Necro with the Jas book, Blood Reaver, bunch of scrolls, nothing really too specific to the dungeon. Um, I'm using a Zorgoth's ring because accuracy issues actually do exist at the later bosses, so Reavers isn't as good. And also, it's nice to have the extra soul stacks for a couple of the mechanics. The first one is kind of sort of like Crassi and Leviathan, so I'm just going to do a typical Necro start, summon, do everything, go on and start with the Death Skull. He phases pretty soon after, so I just Death Skull and do a bunch of specs. I don't use my Living Death just yet. When you get this Moonstone attack, just move out of the way a little bit. You'll get these little squares under you that you just move away from. It seems to track a little bit behind you, so if you just want to keep running around, that should be fine too. When he phases, you're going to run over to the west side of the arena and look for the green arrows on the floor. You will stand on top of them until you collect 3 souls. Everything in here hits with range or melee if you get close enough to the boss. Don't stand in that big AoE that happens right after, and then you can come back out to the main boss and phase it down to the next HP marker. This is when I use my Living Death and Death Skull. I use 1 or 2 Death Skulls, but I save the third, mostly because it phases quick enough that you just head over here to the east side. You do the same thing with the arrows, collect 3 souls. And then back over to the boss. We're going to use our last skull. Make sure to revuln. You're going to need summons back. The Moonstone spec's probably soon, so we're just going to get out of the way. When he summons this Scarab Healer, you want to use a stun on it, so that's Soul Strike or your tier 90 spec. And then we got the Moonstone spec, so we're just going to watch our feet, move out of the mechanics. And then, in just a couple of seconds, the boss is going to launch some bombs. I just do a Reflect and then a Debilitate, and make sure I'm a little healthy. That's really all that you need to do. I don't know why I'm praying Mage there, it should be all ranged. And then, pretty shortly after, the boss will die. Make sure you don't stand in any of these giantly marked AoE areas. Go ahead and grab your loot and make your way into the second boss. Here I'm just going to desummon my minions, resummon them. There are a lot of tile-based AoE mechanics to this boss. I'm going to start very close intentionally, since the first AoE will be here, and then the second also right here. Additionally, the first spec you get after the AoE tiles is going to be like a kind of like a next prison cage. So you actually want to anticipate your freedom ahead of time. Choose one of these moonstones, break it, and then walk out. The boss will attack with melee if you get too close, so just keep your distance if you want to pray mage, or you can go close if you feel like it. I like being far because on this mechanic, I will walk in and then surge out, and then walk back in. The timing is pretty tight on hard mode for all of the tile-based AoEs. It is, I think it's about half the time to react as you would have in normal mode. I'm not certain on that though. So you just want to keep a little bit of distance. When you hit your different HP marker for the phases, he will activate one of these obelisks. I just do like a split soul since you're not taking any damage here, death mark it, throw like a skull and maybe a spec or a volley or something just to get rid of it. Once the first pillar's down, anytime he does the Kia special, actually I'm just going to interrupt myself. Make sure you notice these scarabs when they come out and stun them. It's another tile-based AoE, that one's pretty easy to dodge. When he does the Kia spec after the first pillar's down, there's going to be 3 waves to it. Usually there's only 2 before that. So I'm just going to go in, surge, and then head right back in. And we'll just keep whittling the HP down until we get close to that second HP marker to go for the other obelisk. I'm getting the spec is indicated by the bar over my head, so I'm just going to go ahead and attack that. If you don't get out in time, you can just use a defensive for it. Like you saw that time, I did not make it out, so I just waited for the auto to hit me and then disruption shielded. You can also use a resonance or some other kind of defensive for that. We're gonna go nice and close, surge. Actually, that time when I surged out, I hit a moonstone, which was a little dangerous. So be careful of that, and just be ready to move around it if you have to. This timed bar up here for the obelisks, if you do not kill the obelisk before that timer reaches full, he will do a very, very large AoE across the entire arena. It hurts pretty bad. You can probably spam eat through it, but I recommend using like a Cade or something just to make it super safe. I've been meaning to replace my adren pot in my inventory with a flask, seeing that it's kind of nice to just run the whole dungeon in one shot, but I forgot. So I might not have a ton of adren for the final fight, but it should be fine. Getting another one of those ice specs. Just gonna use a death guard spec to get out of it, since the boss is pretty much dead anyway. And that is number 2 in hard mode. So we're gonna grab our loot, and then head on to the third and final boss. This one is absolutely the toughest of the 3. There are a lot of mechanics. The one thing that I've noticed, which is really nice, is if you notice these little triplets of golden tiles in each quadrant, those seem to be intentionally placed to be a good place to stand for a lot of the mechanics. So I'll try to explain that as I go, but there's quite a bit, so bear with me. There are definitely defense issues here, so you want to use the Lord of Bones Codex if you have it. Also like a Stadius Warhammer spec, if you want to bring that, that's fine too. The first mechanic are these waves. As you can see, you just kind of walk out of one and then out of the other. The Prepare for Death, Be Obliterated is a 3-hit in hard mode, 1 in normal mode magic attack. It hits pretty hard, so you're definitely gonna have to defensive it. I opt to use just a devotion on that first one, and then you'll see on later ones I do like a reflect res, kind of similar to like an Arch Glacier reflect res, if you're familiar with that. When he spawns scarabs, I like to stun the first one with the T90 spec, and then the second with just a soul strike since it has less HP. The boss will attack with both mage and ranged. So on this, I'm going to reflect, take 2 hits, and then drop my prayer and res the third. That time my devotion perk kind of nullified the whole thing, but it's the same gist, and I'll get another one I'm sure to show you. As I said before, standing near these golden tiles is fantastic, because it's kind of right on the border of a lot of the different possible tile locations. So by standing here, you can dodge quite a bit of the mechanics without having to move all that much. So I'm going to death card that first Scarab, and then Soul Strike the second. A lot of the mechanics will overlap with one another, so just be mindful of that. And if you get hit, it's not the worst. You can always eat up or let your Reaver heal you over time. So as said, I'm going to reflect, take 2 hits. My devotion procced yet again, but don't worry, there will be another one, I'm sure. There are a lot of these tile mechanics. They do overlap with other mechanics, which is really where I find a lot of the difficulty of the boss lies. We are going to death card the first Scarab, Soul Strike the second. Once you hit this phase marker, he's going to spawn these dogs. They will get healed by the boss if you do not kill them in time, and they also turn your prayer off quite frequently. The boss also does a lot of AoE type mechanics during this, so just keep an eye on your feet, where you're standing at all times. As you can see, I've been hit by quite a lot of these AoE things, but they don't hurt too bad. Once the dogs are dead, you're going to get sent into the underworld. There's a couple things to do down here, but the first thing you want to do is put on your melee prey and pay attention to these 2 hieroglyphs. So this one kind of looks like a bunch of sideways trees to me. This one's like a little monkey. You want to remember those, and then click on that thing with the arrow above it, kill the dogs, and then click on your 3 soul fragments. When you come out, you need to stand on the hieroglyph that wasn't there. So since the trees are there, the monkey's there, this wasn't in the underworld, so that's where I'm going to stand. The next thing the boss will do is a very interesting AoE. I stand right on this first red tile, wait for the closest to go away, and then escape, and then do the same thing. Oh, I escaped the wrong way, but it worked. You get in a be obliterated right after this, so take the first 2, prayer off, res the third, only when you reflect. You can also just devotion those if you want. Again, lots of AoEs, lots of overlapping mechanics. The timing is pretty tight, so you're gonna get hit by things. Just keep your HP high. You kind of repeat this mechanic for a while once you hit the last phase, so just come in, see what your glyphs are. There's like a guy with his hand up and a little sunshine. So when we come out, this one wasn't there. That's where we're gonna stand. Keep attacking the boss, keep dealing damage. It's immune for a little bit, so I wasted quite a bit of that death skull, but it is what it is. And then you're gonna stand on the first red tile, wait for the innermost, escape, run right back to it, wait for the innermost, escape. Use a reflect, take the first 2 hits, res the third, and then we're just going to watch for a whole lot of AoE tiles. Again, standing in these little triangles of golden tiles is really nice. It makes a lot of your movement just one tile. I'm sure that was intentional. We're going to head back in, pop this again. I use the threads here to get the minions down a little easier. We have like a, I don't know, some sort of dog and another monkey as our hieroglyphs. So we come out, hourglass was not there. Back on the boss. I delayed my death skulls that time a little bit, so it wasn't quite as wasted. stand on the first red tile, wait for the innermost, escape, run back, wait for the innermost, escape. And that's it. That's all of the 3 bosses in hard mode. I hope I covered all the mechanics that you needed, and let me know if you have any questions in the comments. Thanks.